On the Brief Box today, we have Mumba-Chabala, who is from the Zambia Tourism Agency, and we're going to be having a conversation about how Zambia is positioning itself as a country of destination for whether it's tourism or business. Betty, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you very much for having me this morning.
Great. So on the one hand, you've been attending Meetings Africa for the past 4 years.
Yes.
But as a country, Zambia's been here, part of the conversations for around 10 years or so. Tell me about the experiences, firstly for the 4 years that you've been coming, and then we'll talk about how Zambia is positioning itself.
I think for me, as coming from the tourism sector in Zambia and where the sector is now a priority sector for job creation and wealth, coming to Meetings Africa creates an opportunity to network, creates an opportunity to interact, not only with the international buyers, but also the countries within Africa. And if you followed the strategies of Meetings Africa is mostly to change the narrative, of how does Africa do business with Africa? How does Africa leverage on the resources within Africa and promote each other? So for me, it's important because then I'm not only promoting my destination as Zambia, but also as Africa, because I'm African. So being here for the last 4 years as an individual working for the Zambia Tourism Agency, we've seen a massive growth in terms of attendance. I know that we have more than 400 exhibitors. That is huge. So meaning this platform has potential to grow. And we want to tap in Africa because, we're looking at more than 50 countries within Africa. So we have an opportunity to grow this platform so that at least we can trade amongst Africa and do business within Africa. So as an individual, I'm very excited to be back here. We've got a number of meetings lined up. As a country, we're excited, and I come with messages from our minister to say we are a hub of meetings. If you know how Zambia is located, it's surrounded by 8 countries, and we are not landlocked, we are land-linked, meaning all those countries can get into Zambia by road, by air. And also South Africa has been a very strategic partner to Zambia and Zambia's tourism growth, and we've had a lot of benchmarking meetings with South Africa to help us or to give us support in terms of standards, looking at the grading of hotels, the hospitality sector, training, and we've worked very well with the South African government. So we're coming home here and we want to do business with home, and home in this case, I mean Africa. So it's very good to be here as an individual, but also to represent my country, Zambia, here at such a prestigious platform.
I love the way that you phrased it, that you're not landlocked, you're land-linked. That's actually a beautiful way of putting it. You were talking to me about what the message is. Let's expand on that. You're here as the Zambia Tourism Agency. What is the message for the next 2 to 3 days as you have those meetings?
So as a country, we do come with the private sector because our sector is government-led, private sector-driven. So when we're planning these events, we bring our private sector who own these facilities where people come to do meetings. So right now we have over 15 private sector at the stand. And obviously the message is let's do business in Zambia, but also let's expand the African business platform. And this is Meetings Africa. And our strategy is, as a country, we're using our land-linked advantage. And also, Zambia has been known for peace. We accommodate anyone, especially within the African region, because now the narrative for Africa has been, we've been talking, Africa is safe. But then let's start doing business with Africa. Like yesterday when we're doing the Bond Day, one of the strategies for the African trade, continental free trade area is to see how Africa can develop Africa through African resources. And for us, we want to tap into the various African associations to do meetings. And this specific Meetings Africa is really MICE oriented. So we also want to see how we can, apart from ICA, which is one of the biggest associations where you can get meetings. But we also want to see which other associations as a country we can tap into and bring meetings within Africa, but not only within Africa, but also amongst the African countries. If we can co-host big events, we can actually bid for football tournaments. We leverage on South Africa's infrastructure, but also people can also come to Zambia and see maybe the Victoria Falls, the wildlife. And that's the story we're talking about. Let's start building each other as a country. Let's sign MOUs, Memorandum of Understanding, and let's promote Africa, because that's the only way the narrative will change. We keep talking, but if we're not going to promote Africa and use the regions, the associations that are available or regional bodies that are there to make Africa a strong brand, then we're just going to be talking Meetings Africa every other year. So next year, we're hoping that the story will change. Next year, we're hoping that, we did business with South Africa, we did business with Zimbabwe, Botswana, Rwanda, Namibia. That's what we're looking at. So as a country, we're here to say we're not landlocked, we're landlinked. We want people to feel free to come and do businesses. Over the last 5 years, there's been a massive infrastructure development in our country, from the airport to the conference venues. And obviously, the capacities also are still growing, but we also want to spill over to conferences, to countries like South Africa, which already have bigger capacities, but also to leverage on each other's potential as Africa and do business.
Let's look back at those past 4 or 5 years. I mean, I think all of us can attest to what COVID and the pandemic and the impact it had on the MICE industry. What kind of recovery are you starting to see within Zambia for the demand for conferences and meetings, etc.?
I mean, COVID hit. The hardest hit sector for COVID was the tourism sector, because we saw airlines shutting down, hotels closing down, and just business coming to a complete halt. And people had already booked meetings, they were cancelled. So obviously the sector was, like that time we were saying what is going to happen. Our numbers dropped, I think, to about 400,000 arrivals when we were almost hitting 1 million. I know South Africa arrivals are much higher, but the post-recovery has been enormous for the sector. I think you see, because of COVID also, it taught us, one, to look in-house. And in-house, I don't mean just Zambia, in-house within Africa. How does Africa travel within Africa? And the increase, the numbers of tourists that have traveled post-COVID has actually doubled even before pre-COVID. If you look at our country, Zambia, in 2024, we did record more than 2 million visitors. And you're coming from a time where the numbers dropped to 400,000. So the recovery has been great, not only for Zambia, but also for Africa. However, if we look at Meetings Africa, yesterday we were listening in one of the sessions. In terms of Meetings Africa, Africa is only like getting 3% share globally. So meaning we still have a lot of work to do. We still have to position Africa and change the narrative. Any bad news coming from Africa, even one country, any bad story, it affects the entire continent. So we need to realize that a problem in one country is a problem in another country, because out there they will just say it's Africa because Africa is one big continent with one country. You know what I mean? So it affects a lot of things. So we need to change the narrative for Africa to say, we are all unique in our own way. South Africa is unique. Zambia is unique. All the African countries are unique. And we're offering this product that you can experience from Cape to Cairo, so that people start understanding that Africa is home to so many other African countries, and we're ready to host many, many global meetings, at bigger platforms. And Meetings Africa offers such a platform where you can actually get, to meet international and regional buyers. Yeah.
You spoke about changing the narrative. Are you starting to see signs that the narrative is starting to change, that people are starting to take Africa seriously, especially when it comes to its ability, not just from a tourism, because, the continent's very beautiful, but also from conferences, conventions, etc.
Yes. I think the narrative has changed. And we are getting to a point where we are tired of talking about the narrative. We need now to action the narrative. And what is the narrative of Africa anyway? You know what I mean? When we say let's change the narrative, what do we mean? We're just saying let Africa love Africa to start with. Because it's one thing to say let Africa do business with Africa, but you have all these trade barriers. So we need to start with how then do we leverage each other's potential. It's looking at how easily accessible is Africa I don't need a visa to come to South Africa. But other people of Africa need visas. So we start to look at the accessibility within Africa. How do I easily get to South Africa? So once we get those, like Africans are free to travel within Africa, then we start seeing really we mean business when we say let's change the narrative. Africa buying African products, Africans trading in African businesses, promoting African investments. That's the only way you start seeing, because also we speak about the narrative this year. Trust me, 2026, it will be the same narrative. But what are we doing about it to change? Even from our strategic point of view as Zambia, we look at what neighbors we can leverage each other's resources, like Zimbabwe. We share a very beautiful natural resource called the Victoria Falls. So instead of competing who has the best view, for instance, we need to promote it as one. You see it from the Zambian side, you see it from the Zimbabwean side. We like to say that the Victoria Falls is like a beautiful woman, but it depends where you see it from. It's either you see it from the front,
yes,
or you see it from the back. You know what I mean? So that's how we like to market the Victoria Falls, because there's been this thing of saying, who has a better view between Zambia and Zimbabwe? But we've had meetings and said, let's change the narrative and promote the Vic Falls as one. And we've reached a point where Zambia and Zimbabwe now want to do exhibitions at one stand and promote this unique feature that we've been given by God. And this is what we're looking at, especially Southern African countries. How do we tell the story for Southern Africa within the SADC region? How do these countries... Only when we start doing that, then the narrative starts to change. Then you can see real change, real value, and Africa starts enjoying. And you'll be interested to know that during COVID, it was Africa traveling within Africa. We have a lot of South Africans coming into Zambia and vice versa. I can give an example of one of our national parks, the Kafue National Park. 87% of visitors into the park were Africans. So we know that potential for Africa is already there. But we need to change the narrative, and the narrative is accessibility, freedom of movements, freedom of culture, appreciating each other's culture. No culture is backward. All cultures are unique, so we have to reach a point where we attend each other's cultural festivals. We attend each other's trade shows. And here at Meetings Africa, we are also promoting one of our own, the Zambia Travel Expo, in which South Africa is going to attend because they are our strategic partner, but also because I've seen a lot of African countries already here. So we're going to use this platform to invite Africa to come to Zambia.
As we wrap up the conversation, as the Zambia Tourism Agency, what's the most exciting thing that people can look forward to for the rest of the year coming out of Zambia?
Yeah, so Zambia is it's a very unique country. We talk about our biggest strength as Zambia is the peace. We just love people. We are so alike with South Africa because we love people, we like food, we love to dance.
Okay.
So we always say South Africa is the big brother.
Yes.
So looking at the rest of the year, we want to leverage such platforms. We will be in Indaba, in Durban. We've been attending Indaba as well for the past more than 10 years. And the narrative is the same. We're an African country and we want to tap into African growth. We don't want to remain behind. And we are speaking from the highest office. The Minister of Tourism will be there at Indaba, and we just want Zambia to be known as one of Africa's most peaceful country with beautiful people, with a diverse culture, but also willing to welcome every member of the African community. Because that's why we're here. This is Meeting Africa. So Africa means business. And if we mean business, then Africa should visit Africa. For me, I think that's the way forward. And we tap into each other's strength. We promote each other. We remove all this competition that is always there and just go out there and market Africa.
On that note, Viti, thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be at Meetings Africa.
For more conversations, you can go to our YouTube page.